paper people. So let us look at the questions. Niti Aayog has a special role to play in ensuring a cooperative federalism in India. Almost every year you will get one question about Niti Aayog in any different form, because now that planning is not there, they have to give some questions related to planning. So the question will be about only Niti Aayog. So when you are writing answers to these questions, as we keep on saying, you always start with the why aspect of the question. Why Niti Aayog has come into existence? Why Niti Aayog had come into existence? Why? Because the failure of a planning commission in the age of liberalization. Because of the failure of planning commission in the age of liberalization. A planning commission, which was supposed to be a staff agency, became an extra constitutional authority. It had become an extra constitutional authority, which had come in the way of ensuring cooperative federalism in India. Next, long-term planning also had lost its relevance. In the age of globalization and liberalization. Long-term planning also had lost its relevance in the age of globalization and liberalization. So, in the place of planning commission, we had come out with a new organization called Niti Aayog. And if we have to talk about the constitution of Niti Aayog, what we can say is that Niti Aayog is a combination of earlier planning commission and National Development Council. It is a combination of a planning commission plus National Development Council. It's a combination of a planning commission and National Development Council. So what are we saying here? How Niti Aayog can promote cooperative federalism? First of all, Niti Aayog does not have any real financial powers. So that it cannot create a friction between union and states. It does not have any financial powers. So that it cannot create any friction between union and states. Second, Niti Aayog also does not formulate plans. It does not formulate plans, so that states are given more freedom to formulate their programs. The states are given more freedom to formulate their plans. Third, there are no discretionary grants. There are no discretionary grants which characterized the functioning of Planning Commission. Which characterized the functioning of Planning Commission, which created a conflict between the union and states. Discretionary grants, which created conflict between the union and states. Next, on the positive side, these are all the negative sides why Niti Aayog can ensure cooperative federalism. On the positive side, Niti Aayog will help the state governments by providing technical. It will help the state governments by providing technical and other support. It will help the state governments by providing technical and other support. It will act as a research organization. It will act as a research organization, conducting research on the behalf of union and states. Conducting research on behalf of union and states. Next, it will also provide suggestions. It will also provide suggestions to both union and state governments regarding the disputes, financial disputes. It provides suggestions. Next, recently Niti Aayog has recommended reducing the number of centrally sponsored schemes, which again is a bone of contention between the center and states. It has suggested reducing number of centrally sponsored schemes, which again is a bone of contention between center and states. Next, in Niti Aayog, decisions are taken through consensus. Decisions are taken through consensus. In Niti Aayog, decisions are taken through consensus, so that union government does not dominate the states. So for all these reasons, we say that it has a special role to play in ensuring cooperative federalism in India. Next, it is said that the number of functions performed by the district collectors have increased after independence, but it has not changed their functioning. Basically, this is against the criticism of the office of a district collector in India. So again, you start with the historical aspects. The office of district collector had come into existence during the British times. This office of district collector, it had come into existence during British times to perform regulatory functions. Like generation of revenue and maintenance of law and order. After independence, what happened with the adoption of a welfare state? With the adoption of welfare state, the number of functions performed by them have increased. The number of functions performed by district collectors have increased. The number of functions performed by them have increased. What are the functions they are expected to perform now? What are the functions that are expected to be performed by the district collectors? They are expected to implement welfare schemes. They are expected to implement welfare schemes. Then bring about socio-economic change. Bring about socio-economic change. Then after passage of 73rd and 74th amendments, after passage of 73rd and 74th amendments, they are expected to act as a friend, philosopher and guide to local self-governments. Act as friend, philosopher and guide to local self-governments. Next, with the emergence of new localism, they are also expected to perform staff related functions at the local level by ensuring coordination between staff related functions at the local level, by ensuring coordination between various institutions involved in governance, like NGOs, civil society organizations, beneficiary groups, media and other organizations. But what do we say? What we say is that in spite of the changes that have taken place in the functions to be performed by the district collectors, what we say is that there is no change in their functioning. In spite of the changes that have taken place since independence, in terms of the functions performed by them, there is no change in their functioning. Why do we say that? Why do we say that there is no change in their functioning? Why? Because the colonial attitudes of bureaucracy have prevented them from understanding the essence of democratic administration. Colonial attitudes of bureaucracy have prevented them from understanding the essence of democratic administration. Democratic administration demands transparency, accountability and participation. Democratic administration demands transparency, accountability and participation. But colonial structures and attitudes have ensured that these structural reforms remained ineffective. That is what you write, and then you come to the conclusion. What should be done? Sensitivity training should be given to bureaucracy. So that they can understand the essence of democratic administration. Next, Chief Secretary's position in recent times has faced a serious credibility crisis because of politician of civil services at the state level. Discuss. So, how do you start your answer? You start your answer by saying that Chief Secretary at the state level performs more number of functions compared to Cabinet Secretary at the central level. Chief Secretary at the state level performs more number of functions compared to Cabinet Secretary at the central level. It requires leadership skills on the part of the person. It requires leadership skills on the part of the person for him to be successful in that particular position. That is the reason why the senior most bureaucrat at the state level is normally appointed as a chief secretary. Seniority cum merit principle. Senior most bureaucrat, along with the wide ranging experience, are taken into consideration while appointing chief secretary. But in recent times, the chief secretary's position was losing its credibility because of the political and other events that have taken place at the state level. What are those events that have taken place at the state level? First one is the emergence of coalition governments. Emergence of coalition governments at the state level, which reduced the power of chief minister, as well as that of chief secretary. The principle of unity of command is violated. The principle of unity of command is violated. Hierarchy and discipline are also violated. Other principles like hierarchy and discipline. Why? Because principal secretaries at the state level do not follow the orders of chief secretary. Principal secretaries do not follow the orders of chief secretary. Why? Because they know that they have political backing in the form of the ministers. They have the political backing in the form of ministers. Since they are coalition governments, chief minister could not control ministers. Since it is a coalition government, chief ministers could not control ministers. So chief secretary's position is routinely challenged. Chief secretary's position is routinely challenged. Next, another reason why chief secretary's position had become controversial, because of appointment of non-IAS officers. Appointment of non-IAS officers, like in the case of Uttar Pradesh, when a cabinet secretary position was created at the state level, when Mayawati was the chief minister in Uttar Pradesh. When she was the chief minister, a cabinet secretary position was created, and a non-IAS officer was appointed as the head of a cabinet secretary, was the head of secretariat administration at the state level. A non-IAS officer was appointed as the head of secretariat administration at the state level. Next, emergence of chief minister's office, CMO, at the state level. Emergence of chief minister's office at the state level, which has become a rival power center to chief secretary. Which has become a rival power center to chief secretary. Next, tendency of state governments to extend the tenure of a chief secretary for political reasons. Extend the tenure of chief secretary for political reasons. Next, violation of the principle of seniority. Violation of principle of seniority in appointment of chief secretary. So all these things had dented the credibility of the chief secretary's position in recent times. What should be done? You reverse the problems. What should be done? The seniority principle should be strictly followed in appointment of chief secretary. Seniority principle. In most of the states, the seniority principle is violated, which results in politicization. The seniority principle should be strictly followed. Next, code of conduct for civil servants at the state level should be strictly implemented. Code of conduct for civil servants at the state level should be strictly implemented, so that there is no insubordination. There is no insubordination. Next, powers of Chief Minister's office should be clearly defined. Powers of CMO should be clearly defined, so that it does not come into conflict with the Chief Secretary. So that it does not come into conflict with the Chief Secretary. Next, the tendency to appoint, the tendency to, give extensions to Chief Secretary should be stopped. To give extensions to Chief Secretary should be stopped. This is what you have to write. Next, yeah. Pardon? Coalition government. So I am basically talking about what happened in Maharashtra. When there was this coalition government between Congress and NCP. Now it is also coalition government between Shiv Sena and BJP. Exactly, you can give the misuse of Article 356 has come down drastically in recent times due to judicial activism. Discuss with relevant examples. So basically, what are the examples you have to discuss? You have to talk about the 1993 Supreme Court judgment, SR Bommai case. Then Supreme Court judgment in Bihar Assembly dissolution case, 2006. Supreme Court judgment in Bihar Assembly dissolution case, 2006. And recent Supreme Court judgments in Uttarakhand and Arunachal Pradesh. You have to talk about these things. So this is the body of your answer, and what should be the introduction? Why Article 356? Why Article 356? Why Article 356? To ensure unity and integrity of our nation. You start your answer with why Article 356? To ensure unity and integrity. To ensure constitutionalism. To ensure constitutionalism. That is to ensure that the state governments function strictly according to the provisions of the Constitution. State governments should function strictly according to the provisions of the Constitution. Then you talk about the reasons for misuse of Article 356. Just only one line. Why Article 356 has been misused? Why it has been misused? Because of a politicization of office of governor. Politicization of office of governor. Then you talk about the judgments, and as part of conclusion, what do you write? As part of conclusion, what will you write? I don't think I need to discuss the judgments. Yes? Yes? Not required. Required. Why? You do not know those things. No problem. You can read them. Right? These things are very okay. So if you still can, then I will explain. No problem. So how do you conclude your answer? How do you conclude your answer? How do you conclude your answer? Apart from judicial activism, you say that the emergence of coalition governments and increasing awareness among the citizens have resulted in less misuse of Article 356 in recent times. Apart from judicial activism, emergence of coalition governments, increasing awareness among the citizens, and presidential activism had resulted in less misuse of Article 356 in recent times. You will say that. Always go beyond the question. Next, poverty alleviation programs in rural areas have not been successful because of absence of citizen participation. Discuss. Poverty alleviation programs in rural areas have not been successful because of absence of citizen participation. So what is your introduction for this? And why poverty alleviation programs? Why poverty alleviation programs? Because of backwardness of rural areas. Because rural areas in India are more backward. Because in rural areas agriculture was the main occupation of the people, and in agriculture the terms of trade are not favorable, which have resulted in more backwardness. And after independence, India had opted for a welfare state, and it had seen a proliferation of poverty alleviation programs since independence. Proliferation of poverty alleviation programs. After 1990s, with the implementation of 73rd Amendment, after 1990s with the implementation of 73rd Amendment, it was believed that two major problems. One, non-participation of stakeholders. Two major problems. One, non-participation of stakeholders. Two, absence of accountability mechanisms could be overcome. Absence of accountability mechanisms could be overcome. Absence of accountability mechanisms could be overcome. Then what happened? After that, what happened? But old localism has only resulted in politicization. Old localism has only resulted in politicization of development process. Politicization of development process. Gram Sabha was supposed to be the basic unit of administration. Gram Sabha was supposed to be the basic unit of administration, but it was Gram Panchayat that had become powerful institution at the local level. It was a Gram Panchayat that had become powerful institution at the local level. Gram Panchayat had become powerful institution, resulting in politicization of development process. Politicization. Citizen participation had remained a basic issue. Citizen participation had remained a basic issue because of continuation of bureaucracy-centric development process. Citizen participation had remained a basic issue because of continuation of a bureaucracy-centric development process. NGOs and civil society organizations remained at the periphery. NGOs and civil society organizations remained at the periphery of development process. NGOs and civil society organizations remained at the periphery of a development process. Central and state governments are implementing hundreds of developmental schemes. Central and state governments are implementing hundreds of developmental schemes. But average citizen at the local level has no knowledge about those schemes. On an average, it is said that a village in India is expected to receive benefits of more than 350 developmental and welfare schemes. On an average, it is said that a village in India is expected to receive more than 350 developmental benefits of 350 developmental schemes of center and states. Most of the schemes remained only on paper. Most of the schemes remain only on paper. And more importantly, there is no review process. There is no review process. To evaluate the performance. So what are the solutions we are offering then? What solutions we are offering them? First, citizen charter should be made compulsory for all developmental and welfare schemes. The citizen charter should be made compulsory for all welfare and developmental schemes. Second, stakeholders should be involved right from the inception till evaluation. Stakeholders should be involved right from inception till evaluation. Third, bureaucracy should transform itself from line authority to a staff agency. Line authority to a staff agency. Fourth, all the decisions of a Gram Panchayat should be ratified by Gram Sabha before they are implemented. All decisions of Gram Panchayat should be ratified by Gram Sabha before they are implemented. Next, recommendations of social audit committees should be made mandatory for any development and welfare scheme. Recommendations of social audit committees. They should be made mandatory. Next, remember when you are writing answers, you can include some facts related to developmental schemes, poverty alleviation schemes. What is the amount of money spent by the government on poverty alleviation programs in the previous year's budgets? You can include facts, and if you want, you can mention some of the important schemes also. But remember one thing, when you are writing answers in Indian administration, you will be getting marks for writing more points with less explanation. At least discuss 5-6 problems and come out with 5-6 solutions, 10 points. Each point around 15 words, 150 words. More points with less explanation. Next, new localism can be a solution for problems of urban development provided the political executive is willing to relinquish power. So, as we had discussed in the previous question, old localism had only resulted in politicization of development process. Old localism had only resulted in politicization of development process. It had resulted in corruption, nepotism and favoritism. It had resulted in corruption, nepotism and favoritism. It had resulted in unholy nexus between political executive and bureaucracy at the local level. Political executive and bureaucracy at the local level. Unholy nexus between political executive and bureaucracy at the local level. It has not resulted in participation of citizens. That is the reason why we had come out with a new approach to development at the local level in urban areas in the form of new localism. The example of new localism is JNN-URM, Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission, JNN-URM, wherein it emphasized on public-private partnership. It focused on professionalization of administration at the local level. In brackets NPM, New Public Management. It emphasized on ensuring participation, transparency and accountability with the help of ensuring participation, transparency and accountability with the help of non-governmental organizations civil society organizations and other institutions. Then it was taken forward with the help of the schemes that were implemented in recent times in the form of smart cities, in the form of Amrit, in the form of Amrit, in the form of smart cities and in the form of Amrit, and in the form of this Swachh Bharat. The objective of all these schemes is to end the monopoly of the objective is to end monopoly of political executive and bureaucracy over development process, and monopoly of political executive and bureaucracy in development process, and to ensure stakeholder participation, and then you say, but the success of these schemes depend on willingness of a political executive to share power with the people. Success of these schemes depend on willingness of political executive to share power with the people. Okay, when can this happen? When will political executive will be willing to share power with people? When will they do this? Only when it is electorally beneficial to them. Political executive will implement any reforms only when it benefits them electorally. So for this, what is required? We have to move to a political culture based on cognitions. So that political executive will share power with the citizens. They will share power with citizens. It requires multidimensional reforms at the local level. Like defining the role of bureaucracy, the district collector. The first thing is district collector should be renamed as a chief executive officer of the district, chief development officer or chief executive officer of the district, and regulatory functions should be taken away from him. Next, at the local level, recall can be introduced. Recalling their representatives. I think it was implemented in Madhya Pradesh, I think, at the local level, recall, so that it makes political executive more accountable. Next, at the local level, policy formulation and implementation should be clearly divided. Line and staff function should be clearly divided. And implementation should be in the hands of professionals. Like in the United States of America, which successfully implemented a council manager form of government at the local level. Like in the United States of America, which successfully implemented council manager form of government at the local level. Local council will be responsible for formulating the policies, and the manager appointed from the private sector would be responsible for implementing them. That is what you write for this question. All of them are very important from your general studies point of view also. Last year in your GS, maximum number of questions in paper 1, 2, 3 are from urban development. So you have to have very good knowledge about urban development. This year also the same situation will be repeating. So once you know about public administration, that's why I always say, if you are good with your public administration, really good, not good in the terms of theoretical aspects, practical aspects, you will be doing very well in your general studies also. You need practical knowledge of the aspects of administration, because all your general studies papers, all the 4 papers of GS are about practical aspects of administration. And you should know, that is the reason why they have included this topic also in your GS comparison of constitutions. Why? Because they would like you to know how and what kind of systems are there in foreign countries which India can adopt to make our administration efficient, competent and accountable. For local self governments, you talk about council manager form of governments. Next, globalization has impacted significantly the district administration in India in recent times. So what is the impact of globalization on district administration in India? What is the impact of globalization on district administration? You talk about the positive aspects as well as negative aspects. What are the positive aspects? What are the positive aspects? More FDI is coming into the country. More FDI is coming into the country to improve infrastructure. FDI. Where this investment come, the proposals are cleared by the central and state governments, but the implementation process takes place at the local level. At the local level. So next, what are the other positive aspects of globalization? Public-private partnerships to make administration more efficient and accountable. Public-private partnerships. Next, what are the other positive aspects? Globalization also has resulted in the expansion in the concept of governance. Expansion in the concept of governance. Earlier governance was limited to government only, especially at the local level. Now we have what you call a multi-actor paradigm. Multi-actor paradigm. Next, what are the other positive aspects of globalization? It has provided opportunities for local self-governments to be more financially viable. Opportunities for them to be more financially viable because of increasing sources of revenue for them, and also opportunities for them to raise finances from other sources. Next, what are other positive aspects of globalization? At the local level, on the district administration, at the local level, what are the other aspects? Yes, another important thing is increased opportunities for people. Increased opportunities for people. To utilize the resources at the local level. To utilize resources at the local level. To utilize resources at the local level to benefit out of globalization. That is what we say. Think locally and act globally. To utilize resources. On the other hand, what are the negative consequences of globalization? What are negative consequences of globalization at the district level? First one is problems related to sustainable development. Problems related to sustainable development. Ecological equilibrium is disturbed. Environmental degradation and pollution had become major problems. Next, it has widened inequalities at the local level. Globalization has widened inequalities at the local level. It has widened inequalities at the local level. Both absolute and relative poverty levels are going up absolute and relative poverty levels are going up. Next, jobless growth. Jobless growth. Unemployment rates are increasing. Every year almost 50 million people are adding to the workforce. Jobless growth. Next problem is Naxalism. Because of failure of disaster management. Because of failure of relief and rehabilitation measures. Naxalism. Next problem at the local level is globalization of terror. Terrorism has spread to small cities also. Globalization of terror. In earlier, terrorism was restricted to only metropolitan areas. Now it has spread to smaller cities also. So under these circumstances, how should the district administration react to it? What should the district administration do? Okay, it has to minimize the negatives and maximize positives. Minimize negatives and maximize positives. How this can be done? Yes. District administration perspective, these are the challenges. You have to maximize the positives. If you are a district collector, you have to maximize the positives. Yes. Yes. Exactly what we are saying is that globalization has impacted positively these things. It has impacted negatively these things. Now we have to talk about the reforms. What should be done to benefit out of globalization? What is the impact of globalization? It has created opportunities, and at the same time it has also created more problems for district administration. Law and order is a major problem because of a spread of global terror. Naxalism is a major problem because of failure of development process. Environmental pollution is a major problem, increasing inequalities. These are all the challenges. Before 1991, we did not have any of these things as part of our district administration. Before 1991, it was only state-centric development. Before 1991. Before 1991, the reasons for Naxalism were different compared to reasons for Naxalism after 1991. For that, you should know the history of Naxalism, which is part of your internal security in General Studies paper 3. Reasons for Naxalism in different states is different. You call it a Naxalism, but in different states it is different. And after 1991, what we have seen is that the process of globalization is responsible for a spread of Naxalism in those states which it already was there. The issues have changed. That's what we are saying. After 1991, it is because of this relief and rehabilitation measures in tribal areas. Failure of the state to protect the interests of tribals in the name of development, that resulted in the spread of Naxalism. So if you are part of the district administration, how you are going to tackle it? That is what the essence of the question. So discuss the impact means you are talking about the positives as well as negatives. So what should be done? What kind of changes should be made so that we can benefit out of this globalization? We can maximize the positives and minimize the negatives. What can be done? What can be done? How many of you have read the second year's report on district administration? Do you know that it is there? Look at my questions. The standards are dropping much more rapidly than a Sri Lankan batsman. Pardon? Very good. I am asking a different question. How many of you know that there is something called second year's report on district administration? Very good. You have answered the difficult question. Now the easy question. What are the recommendations of second ERA? What are the recommendations of second ERC regarding changing role of district administration, district collector in the age of globalization? Yes, write all those solutions. Okay. Do you want me to dictate them? Not required. At least one person should have shame. At least 2-3 points. Okay. If I dictate 2-3 points in the examination, remember only 1 point, and when writing, you don't write anything. Okay. If I have to dictate, I will have to dictate at least 10 points, so that you will read 5 points, go to the examination hall and remember 2 points, and don't write anything. I would expect you to read the report and remember the recommendations rather than me dictating them. If you want, I can dictate, I have no problem. 2 points. Why only 2? Why not 20? Now, what is the changing role of district administration in the age of globalization? As I said, you must maximize the positives and minimize the negatives. What can you do? How to maximize the positives? New localism. Maximizing the positive means the district collector, what should he do? The district collector should identify the strengths of the district. Every district in India has its some of the strengths, whether it is physical physical things, physical assets like or natural resources, physical resources, or geographical resources, or human resources. Every district has its strength. For example, some districts have tourism, some districts have minerals, some districts have artisans who are who can come out with unique products which can be marketed at the global level. The most important thing when you talk about maximizing strengths of globalization is implementing new localism at the state level, within the districts. First, every district collector must identify the resources of the district. It can be physical, it can be human, it can be economic, it can be natural resources. The district has a good amount of forests. Then how to explore the mineral resources of the district? If the district has a good amount of irrigated land, how to maximize the productivity of agriculture? If the district has a good amount of what you call experienced workers, handicrafts, or any other professions, what you have to do? By using B2B and B2C techniques, you must ensure that there is no middleman in the whole process, from producer to the final consumer, using e-governance, by creating markets for the products of local artisans at the domestic as well as international level. A district collector must think out of box. He cannot simply what you call be implementing rules and regulations. If he is innovative, if he is creative, he must be able to have a complete objective performance evaluation of the resources of the district, and see how they can be used for to benefit out of globalization. For example, if the district has a good number of what you call educated youth, then the district collector should encourage entrepreneurship among the people, creating more employers than creating more employment. This is what you have to talk about. And on the other hand, when you talk about reducing the negative sides, what you talk about is you must encourage what you call human intelligence at the ground level. Human intelligence at the ground level, by reducing, removing negative perception about the police forces, because police forces in India unfortunately do not enjoy what you call credibility among the masses. So district collector can play a very significant role, proactive role in reducing the negative perception and ensuring human intelligence at the ground level, so that terrorism and Naxalism can be the threat of terrorism and Naxalism can be reduced. You talk about using information systems, MIS, management information systems. You talk about involving local self governments and then NGOs and other influential sections of society. You talk about public-private people partnerships at the local level. All these are all the solutions. You can write hundreds of solutions. Next, district planning committees in India, in most of the states, are conspicuous by their absence. Discuss with relevant examples. So, you start your answer with why district planning committees. Why district planning committees? Why district planning committees? Centralized top-down approach to development. Centralized top-down approach to development between 1950s and 1990s was a failure. Centralized top-down approach to development between 1950s and 1990s was a failure, resulting in a decentralized participative governance. Resulting in decentralized participative governance. Then under Articles 243 ZD, Article 243 ZD, all states and union territories are expected to constitute DPCs. Except Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Delhi and Kashmir. But even the 74th Amendment was passed in 1995 by all the states, majority of the states are yet to constitute DPCs. Majority of the states are yet to constitute DPCs. Majority of the states are yet to constitute DPCs. And even in those states which have DPCs, they are only there in letter but not in spirit. What are the states that are yet to constitute DPCs? States like Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, then Jharkhand and Punjab, Chandigarh. In these states, DPCs are yet to be constituted. They are yet to be constituted. And what are the DPCs expected to do? The DPCs are expected to formulate plans for the entire district. For the entire district. That includes both rural and urban areas. Yes. Yeah, they form, obviously they are collating the plans of local self-government, they formulate the plans for the entire district. For example, a panchayat, at the lowest level, you have the, Gram Sabha. From Gram Sabha it will go to the Mandal Panchayats. From Mandal Panchayats it will go to the Jilla Parishads. This is in rural areas. In urban areas, from Nagar Panchayats to the municipal councils. And both the DPC consists of members from both rural areas and urban areas. What they do, they integrate the plans of rural and urban areas and come out with the plan for the entire district. So if you want to say collate or if you want to say formulate, both of them are fine. Basically adding up the plans of all the local self bodies at each and every time, coming out with a much broader plan for the entire district. This is what you call planning from below or decentralized planning. But what we are saying is that most of the states never really did not really bother to constitute DPCs. In those states where DPCs have been constituted, they are not at all functional. They are not at all functional. We have given the examples of the states which are yet to constitute DPCs. In other states where DPCs have been constituted, their performance is not up to the mark. Why? Because what are the reasons why DPCs have failed? Why? Because there is no separate budget for the districts. You can have plans only when you have separate budget. There is no separate budget for the district. Second, funds given to panchayats. Funds given to panchayats are conditional. They are not unconditional. That is, they are tied to central and state schemes. For example, you will get funds under MNREGA. So you must be spending the money only under MNREGA. So there is no, what is the question of planning there when you are expecting money only under that particular scheme. So funds given to panchayats are tied to central and state schemes. Next, there is no accountability at the state level to transfer funds to panchayat bodies and other local self-governments to transfer funds. Next, there is no separate window in the state budget. There is no separate window in the state budget for local self-governments. Next, members of DPC do not have technical knowledge to formulate plans. Technical knowledge. They do not have any technical knowledge. Next, they do not have any power to oversee the implementation of plans. They do not have any power to oversee the implementation of plans. Next, in most of the states, at the local level, district collector still enjoys absolute powers in terms of allocation of funds, and in terms of implementation of schemes. Next, unwillingness on the part of the government, central government to reduce the number of centrally sponsored schemes. For all these reasons, DPCs have been ineffective. What are the solutions? You can reverse the problems and you will get the solutions. Yes. Yes, who is he? Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can write about State Finance Commission. The recommendations of State Finance Commission are not implemented. That's what we have said. The state budget should not specify what is the amount of money that should be given to local self-governments. Even the State Finance Commission comes out with recommendations regarding vertical as well as horizontal devolution. The state's budget should not specify what is the amount of money that should be given to panchayats within the stipulated time period. So when there is no certainty regarding the availability of funds, how can you formulate the plans? State Finance Commission is regressive in nature. Last year what? Last year was that question there? State Finance Commission was regressive. No, I don't think so. Huh? I don't know what exactly the question, but I don't think it was framed like that. State Finance Commission is regressive. Nobody will give that kind of question, I think. But what is the exact question? How it is undermining State Finance Commission? But you please tell me the exact question, not your interpretation. Okay, that's very important. The truth is something different. Our perception will be completely different. Anyway, no problem. If you want, I will discuss the question in our next test. No problem. Right? But for this question, this is what you have to write. Obviously, that is not related to State Finance Commission. It's okay. The question is different. Okay, you can sleep peacefully. No problem. The question is completely different. You read the question again and then you will understand it. Very simple question. UPSC will never make your life difficult, don't worry. Okay. Yeah, I heard the question, no problem. You read the question second time, you will get the answer. If you still not, I will explain, no problem. Very simple question. Lord Ripon's resolution of 1882 has been described as the Magna Carta of local self-government in India. Why do we say that Lord Ripon's resolution is described as the Magna Carta of local self-governments? So who was this Lord Ripon? Don't say was the Viceroy or Governor General. He belonged to liberal school of thought in the United Kingdom. Liberal school of thought. In UK you have two political parties, Conservatives and Labour. He belonged to the liberal school of thought. When Gladstone became the Prime Minister of UK, in 1880s, he had sent Lord Ripon to India. When he became the Prime Minister of UK, Gladstone was also a democratic Prime Minister who believed in liberal values. So when Lord Ripon he came to India, what he had seen was all the local governments were under bureaucratic control. He had seen that all local governments were under bureaucratic control. Even the municipalities existed. For a long period of time. They were mostly controlled by bureaucrats. The municipal commissioner was nominated by the government. In rural areas, there were local committees to manage local affairs like sanitation, roads and others. Sanitation, education, roads, health and others. But these local committees again were under bureaucratic control. They were under bureaucratic control. And what did Lord Ripon do? In 1882, through his resolution, he had removed bureaucratic control. In 1882, through his resolution, he had removed bureaucratic control. And what did he do? In rural areas, local boards, also known as taluka boards and tehsil boards, local boards, taluka boards and tehsil boards were established. Tehsil boards were established. The members were elected by people then nominated by the government. Similarly, in urban areas, in municipalities, the members were elected rather than nominated. And the responsibilities of municipalities were also expanded. And the chairman of these committees are non-official members. That means they are not bureaucrats. Chairman of these committees, both in urban areas and rural areas, they are non-official members. and chairman is non-official members. That means they should not be from government. And nominated members cannot be more than 1/3 of total strength. The government also nominates, but they cannot be 1/3 of the total strength of the municipal bodies. And they were given the management of these local bodies were given the management of health, education, roads and communication. And they were also given health, education, roads and communication. They were also given certain financial powers also. They were also given certain financial powers. And they were kept away from government control. They were kept away from government control. Government retained the right to dissolve them. Government retained the right to dissolve them if they do not perform their functions. If they do not perform their functions. But the government did not interfere in their functioning. Did not interfere in their functioning. And that is the reason why we say that Lord Ripon's model is still being followed for local self-governments in India. He is called the father of local self-governments in India. Why you have to write here? Pardon? See, this Lord Ripon was there only for a period of a few years. As long as he was there, these reforms were implemented. The moment he left, Britishers again went back to the exactly. The actual local self-governments, no, in ancient period we don't know. I don't know whether you must be there. I don't know, but no, it was not there. In ancient period, they were different. They were traditional centers of power. What you call Max Weber's example of traditional authority, local self-governments in ancient times. And whereas in the modern times, we don't have that kind of real local self-governments, even after the passage of 73rd, 74th Amendment. But the question is about Lord Ripon's resolution. You agree with the statement? For a change, we agree. Next, more than 100 smart cities. What India needs are 1 lakh smart villages. So why do we need 1 lakh smart villages than 100 smart cities? Basically, the question is about the significance of rural development. Why do we need 1 lakh smart villages more than 100 smart cities? Why? I think this question was asked in yes, in your GS. I think they have asked this question. So why do we need 1 lakh smart villages than 100 smart cities? Why? Yes, still 70% of 67.5% of population lives in rural areas. Still 67.5% of rural population lives in. Next, more than 50% of our population still lives on agriculture for their survival. For more than 50% of population, still agriculture is their main livelihood. Third, after liberalization, rural demand has influenced the business cycles in India. Business cycles in India. Rural demand. Fourth, problems of urbanization. when people are migrating to cities, problems of urbanization. Next, overall development of the country is not possible unless rural areas are developed. Overall development is not possible unless rural areas are developed. Next, geographically 100 smart cities, the size is very small to have a major impact on development process. Geographically the size of 100 smart cities is very small to have a major impact, whereas 1 lakh smart villages means they will cover the entire country. 1 lakh smart villages will ensure balanced regional development. They will ensure balanced regional development. Next, from the point of view of utilizing the skills, of people in rural areas, 1 lakh smart smart villages are more important. From the point of view of utilizing the skills, what you call to reap a demographic dividend, 1 lakh smart villages are significant. Demographic dividend, 1 lakh smart villages are significant. Next, from the point of view of gender equity also, from the point of view of gender equity, women and development, 1 lakh smart villages are important. So this for all these things we say that we require 1 lakh smart villages than 100 smart cities. At any point of time we prefer 1 lakh smart villages than 100 smart cities. Next, you can mention, you can talk about it, Shyam Prasad Mukherjee Rural Urban Mission, you can talk about cluster of villages, you can talk about it. Yes. In recent times, many states have been demanding special category status for different regions. Discuss the opinion of the central government in this regard. Yeah, obviously, cities should also be developed, no problem. Development of cities and villages is not a 2% zero sum game. Both of them can go together. So you can conclude by saying that we can have 100 smart cities, 1 lakh smart villages, and 1000 mega towns. Anything you can say, anything. What is the point of you won't be losing anything by writing all these things, except that you will get into services. As Karl Marx has said, workers of the world unite. You have nothing else to lose except your bondage. So similarly, you write all these things so that you can come out of the bondage. Next, many states have been demanding special category status for different regions. So discuss the opinion of the central government in this regard. What is the opinion of the central government regarding special category status? Yes. Why the states are demanding special category status? First of all, why they are demanding? What are the benefits they will get out of special category status? Funding of schemes 90-10. Okay, then tax concessions if you set up industries. Then soft loans. That means they can get loans with long-term gestation periods and less rates of interest. Fourth, the government also write off the loans of these states, writing off loans. Next, tax credit will be given to industries. Apart from tax concessions, tax credit also is given to industries. And they will be given preference in any other scheme of the central government. Any other program of the central government, they will be given preference. That is the reason why they are demanding. What are the states that are demanding a special category status? Yes, in Andhra Pradesh, the central government has said that it will give special category status when State Reorganization Act was passed in Parliament. Then apart from AP, Bihar, then Orissa, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, all these states are demanding, and of course Bengal, special category status. All these states are demanding special category status because of the benefits. Now, what is the opinion of the central government now? What central government is saying is that this special category status has lost its relevance because of the changes that have taken place in recent times. It has lost its relevance because of the changes that have taken place. Why? 14th Finance Commission has increased the funds to all states irrespective of normal or special category. The funds given to the states had increased from 32 to 42%. 14th Finance Commission has increased the funds to all states. Second, why special category status is not relevant now? The number of centrally sponsored schemes had come down drastically. Number of centrally sponsored schemes had come down drastically. So the additional financial assistance to special category states also had come down drastically. Third, with the abolition of Planning Commission, all funds given to the state governments are unconditional grants. With the abolition of the Planning Commission, all funds given to the states are unconditional grants. So, the states are free to have the freedom. Tax concessions had become a thing of the past. Tax concessions had become a thing of the past. With the passage of GST, tax concessions had become a thing of the past. Next, the government has stopped the practice of writing of loans in recent times. It has terminated the practice of writing of loans of the states in recent times. Next, earlier special category status was given to states by following a certain procedure. What was the procedure? National Development Council would ratify the recommendations of Planning Commission. The procedure was Planning Commission would recommend, NDC would ratify it. At present there is neither Planning Commission nor NDC. So there is no way states can be given SCS, special category status. That is the reason why central government says that now there is no special category status. Every state is equal, except that Gujarat is more equal than other states, because Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of Gujarat. Okay. So otherwise no other state will have any special category status. So that is what you have to write for this question. You have to write very specific answers. If you look at Indian administration, all the questions are very specific. When you know the facts, then only you can write the answers. Very important. Obviously, no. A special category status has not resulted in any development of these states. All the states which have got special category status, it has not resulted in any drastic development, except in Uttarakhand. Most of the industries had their basis in Uttarakhand to avail of tax concessions. Otherwise, not much of development has taken place because of special category status. So, economic survey says that instead of depending on the central government for your survival, try to empower yourself, improve your finances. That is what economic survey says. Next, critically analyze the impact of globalization on union state financial relations with relevant examples. how globalization has impacted union state financial relations. So when you're talking about this, again you have to be very specific answer in terms of revenues and in terms of expenditure, how it has impacted globalization in terms of revenues and in terms of expenditure, in terms how globalization has impacted center-state relations. So in terms of revenues, what happened? Because of globalization, the overall tax revenues have increased. Overall tax revenues have increased. Overall tax revenues have increased because of increase in GDP. When GDP increases, so tax revenues also will go up, tax buoyancy. And it has benefited both the union and the states. It has benefited both the union and states. And then what happened? The central government came out with this radical decision of implementing 14 Finance Commission recommendations, wherein the states have got 42% of revenues. So because of globalization, both the states and center have benefited. The states have benefited more because of the decision of the central government to give more finances to the states. Next, what else? What else has happened because of globalization? How it has impacted on the revenue side? What else? After globalization, planning had come to an end. Planning had come to an end. Central planning had come to an end. Central planning had come to an end. So obviously that Central Planning Commission was replaced with Niti Aayog, and Niti Aayog does not have any real financial powers. Does not have any real financial powers. The basic problem, the basic conflict between the center and states was about the role of Planning Commission, which was an extra constitutional body. Now after globalization, the government had taken the decision to end the planning process and replace Planning Commission with Niti Aayog. And this Niti Aayog is promoting what you call cooperative federalism. Next, what else has happened? What else has happened? And next, we have implemented GST. Major GST we have implemented. We have implemented GST, Goods and Services Tax. And what is the outcome of GST on center-state relations? GST was implemented with a federal spirit, wherein the central government has agreed to completely compensate the states for the loss of revenue. For the loss of revenue. So basically you are moving towards what you call cooperative federalism. And then coming to the expenditure side, what happened? You are talking about FRBM Acts. FRBM Acts. Initially what happened? Initially states were forced to implement FRBM provisions, wherein the fiscal deficit of the states was capped at 3% of their GDP. 3% of their GDP. Whereas at the central level, these FRBM acts were not implemented. The fiscal deficit of the central government kept on going up. The borrowings of the central government have increased. But in recent times, what happened? There was a reversal of the situation. In recent times, we have seen a complete reversal. The fiscal deficit of the states has increased to around 3.9% of their GDP. Whereas central government was able to contain its fiscal deficit to what? 3.2%. So central government was able to ensure more fiscal discipline. Now, let us look at the problem areas here. What are the still problem areas? What are the still problem areas here? Globalization has increased the revenues of central government. It has increased revenues of central government, which the central government is not willing to share with the states. How does the revenues of central governments went up because of globalization? Disinvestment proceeds. Disinvestment proceeds. Next, sale of assets. Sale of assets. Next, sale of natural resources like spectrum, coal mines and other things. Sale of natural resources like spectrum, coal mines. And what is the problem here? Unwillingness on the part of the central government to share these revenues with the state governments. Coal auctioning, that is what only. Central government has said that it will share the proceeds of coal, auctioning of coal over a period of time, over a period of 20 years. Central government is always intelligent. The immediate ones, disinvestment, no. Spectrum, which you will get immediately, no. Whatever may be, it may be receipts of the central government. In a true federal form of government, central government should always share its revenues with the states. That is a federal spirit. That is what you say about federal spirit. And central government has raised lakhs of crores of rupees through disinvestment. It has not shared a single penny with the states. And what is the argument of the central government here? These are not a part of Finance Commission recommendations. The argument of the central government is that central government will share only those revenues which are part of Finance Commission recommendations. It will only share those revenues which are part of Finance Commission recommendations. That is what the argument of the central government. So this is what we say about then what are the solutions? Yes. Oil prices coming down. Yeah, obviously, when the global oil prices have come down, it has what you call resulted in abnormal profits both for the central and state governments. Both of them are imposing taxes. Of course, it is the people who are suffering, but both of them benefited out of it. As we have said initially that the revenues have increased, but both for central and state governments. Yes. Yes.
What we have invested earlier, we already have given the share. The center has already given the share to the state, and then whatever it will require, that it is invested in this. Now it is disinvested, so that is only belongs to the state.
It should belong to neither center nor state. It belongs to the people. Okay. It belongs to the people. Now, your argument is that it is the central government that has invested in this public sector enterprise. So why should it share with the states? When the central government invested, it invested 100 rupees. Now it has become 1 lakh rupees. Yes, if that is the case, let the central government take only 100 rupees. Rest of the thing, let them share with the states. Right? So these are all the things M.M. Bunchi Commission went into. It has suggested that let the center share in the true spirit of federalism every revenue with the state governments. What is the reason why Finance Commission did not recommend? Because when Finance Commission had come into existence, these sources of revenue were not available to the central government. That is the reason why they were outside the purview of a Finance Commission. At the time when Finance Commission had come into existence, was there any disinvestment? When there was no investment, there was no disinvestment. Okay. Was there any auctioning of spectrum? There was no spectrum at that point of time. So central government cannot say these things. So then how do you conclude your answer? You conclude your answer by with what you call collaborative federalism. Collaborative federalism. You say that at present both the center and states have to come together. Both center and states have to come together to benefit out of globalization. To benefit out of globalization. states must reduce their revenue deficits. States must reduce their revenue deficits so that more amount of money can be spent on capital expenditure. More amount of money can be spent on capital expenditure. Similarly, states are expected to devolve more funds to local self-governments. States are expected to devolve funds to local self-governments. Local self-governments. On the other hand, in a true spirit of federalism, union government can think of sharing other revenues with the states also. This is the recommendation given by Punchi Commission only, so we are not saying anything radical. In true spirit of federalism, union government can share other revenues with the states also. Next, yes. But the question is mostly about financial relations. That will be not a burden on union government. Normally, union government will always ask the states to implement them. The implementation process only takes place at the state level. It will not be burdens only on the shoulders of union government. Yes, there are so many things. We are only looking at the major aspects because you cannot be writing. Next, identify the major inadequacies in the administration of the welfare programs of the weaker sections. Suggest effective strategies and alternative measures to ensure their proper implementation and to enhance beneficiary satisfaction. So, what are the major inadequacies in the administration of welfare schemes of the weaker sections? I think these are the very straightforward questions. So, what are the major weaknesses? What are the major weaknesses? The first one is the emphasis is more on providing temporary relief. The emphasis is more on providing temporary relief. What you call it as the emphasis is on poverty alleviation than on poverty removal. The emphasis is on poverty alleviation than on poverty removal. Poverty alleviation than on poverty removal. Second, subsidies are given more importance. Subsidies are given more importance than focusing on infrastructure. Subsidies are given more importance than focusing on improving infrastructure. Third, still centralized top-down approach to development. Fourth, multiple schemes. Multiple schemes with the same objective. Resulting in wastage of expenditure, wastage of money. Multiple schemes. Next, wrong identification of beneficiaries. Real beneficiaries are still kept out of the schemes. Real beneficiaries. For example, when you are making Aadhaar compulsory, most of the real beneficiaries may not have Aadhaar. Real beneficiaries are kept out of the schemes. Next, line item budgets. line item budgets. Line item budgets, wherein expenditure is mentioned and it is not linked to outcomes. Line item budgets. Next, still bureaucracy centric development. Still bureaucracy centric development. Next, most important, complete absence of performance evaluation. Complete absence of performance evaluation. CAG does not audit welfare schemes. Next, in spite of RTA, high levels of secrecy. High levels of secrecy in implementation. High levels of secrecy in implementation. Next, politicization. Because of old localism. So, after writing all these things, you can mention about some of the schemes which have been implemented, which are being implemented by the government. You can talk about some of the schemes, and then you talk about what should be done. What are the reforms? You can talk about what are the reforms. So, what are the reforms? First one is there should be a time limit for subsidies. Subsidies cannot be given forever. Through political consensus, subsidies should be given only for one generation. Through political consensus, subsidies should be limited to only one generation, say for a period of 25 years. Time limit. Next, the emphasis should be on removing poverty than on providing temporary relief. Removing poverty. Next, as suggested by 7th Pay Commission and other commissions, the number of centrally sponsored schemes should be less than 10. Number of centrally sponsored schemes should be less than 10. Less than 10. Next, merger of all the schemes having similar objectives. Merger of all the schemes to avoid duplication and wastage. Next, objective identification of beneficiaries. Objective identification of beneficiaries on the basis of quantifiable standards. On the basis of quantifiable standards. Next, outcome budget should be made compulsory for all developmental and welfare schemes. Outcome budgets should be made compulsory. Next, citizen centric governance. Next, social audit should be made compulsory, and the recommendations should be implemented in both letter and spirit. Then use of technology, Jandan, Aadhaar and mobile. Use of technology to ensure transparency and accountability. So like this you can write as much as you want. Next, the old city owed its vitality to religious and cultural forces as a center of administration. The modern city, however, is an economic phenomenon. In the light of the above statement, discuss the problems of suburban sprawls, slum dwellings, urban renewal in metropolitan areas, highlighting the central issues of structural reorganization, functional distribution in city management. For these kind of questions, I would expect you to read 12th Finance Commission report on, not 12th plan report on urban governments, 12th plan on urban development, 12th 5-year plan. It has some very beautiful points there. 12th plan on urban governance, where it has identified the weaknesses in urban governance: structural, functional, financial and personal. All the weaknesses: structural weaknesses, functional weaknesses, financial weaknesses and personal. Personal means bureaucracy, officials. So what the question says is, the question says that if you look at almost all the major cities in India, you can divide them into old city and new cities, new towns. Old cities are mostly cultural and religious centers. You take the case of Delhi also, old Delhi. Okay, you go to any state, any major cities in India, old cities and the new towns. New towns are mostly economic phenomena. They had come up because of the economic activities that are taking place. Industrialization, mostly industrial towns. Now what is happening is that here the infrastructure was sufficient only to cater to a certain sections of society. Because of industrialization, because of urbanization, we have seen expansion in the limits of the cities, from old to new to satellite towns also. Because of this, we have so many problems: suburban sprawls, and then slum dwellings, urban renewal, and other problems of urbanization. Other problems of urbanization. And are we in a position to tackle these problems? Obviously, we are not in a position to tackle these problems. Why? Because of, as we have said, 4 important weaknesses: structural, functional, financial and personal. These are all the weaknesses. Structural means we don't have the structures, neither democratic nor bureaucratic, to tackle the issues arising out of urbanization. Functional. The problem with this functional aspects is these structures perform different functions. Typical Rixian problem of a prismatic society. A single structure performs multiple functions. A single function is performed by multiple structures. What do we call it as? Yes, polyfunctionalism. The problem is that the structures do not have any defined functions. They do not have any defined functions. That is the reason why sometime back UPSC has asked a question that this unifunctional agencies and development authorities have created a functional jungle in urban areas. Unifunctional agencies and urban development authorities have created a functional jungle in urban development in India. Next, financial. You require 60 lakh crores of rupees to improve urban infrastructure. And next, personal. Urban local self governments do not have any. They do not have any separate personnel of their own to implement their programs. Separate personnel of their own to implement their programs. And you have to come out with solutions to all these problems. So what are the solutions to the problems? Structures. As we have said, in urban areas there should be one single authority, one single power center to which all other structures are accountable. There should be one single power center to which all other structures are accountable. Like in United States of America. In United States of America, the chairman, the mayor of the city has absolute powers. Mayor of the city has absolute powers. After 2001, this terror attacks, it was the New York City mayor who undertook all kinds of responsibilities. It was not the president, it was not the ministers, it was not the secretary of state. It was the entire responsibility fell on the shoulders of the mayor of the city. Why? Because the buck always stops with the mayor in United States of America. That is the reason why local self-governments are very powerful, strong, effective. Whereas in India, how many of us know about the mayors? Do you know who is the mayor of East Delhi or Central Delhi? Or how many municipal corporations are there in Delhi? 3. Do you know who is your mayor? Where you are residing now? You don't know. Nobody will know, including himself. Okay? Why? Because they don't have any real power. Why? Because, as we have said, too many structures with no accountability. It has created a functional jungle. It has created a functional jungle. The basic problem is that you take the case of Delhi. Who is responsible for development of Delhi? Ministry of Urban Development. Because Delhi is a metropolitan city. It is a union territory. Then Ministry of Home Affairs for law and order. Then you have the Delhi state government also. Nowadays he is not seen, but Arvind Kejriwal used to be active once upon a time. Nowadays what is happening to him? We don't know. Okay. Then you have, since Delhi is a union territory, you have a lieutenant governor who has absolute powers. Then Delhi is trifurcated into 3 different municipalities. So the municipal corporation, mayor and members, they are also responsible. Trifurcation. Next, unifunctional agencies like Delhi Jal Board and electricity boards. Unifunctional agencies means perform a single function, electricity and in a public works department, like this. And then you have Development Authority, DDA, Delhi Development Authority. Then you have in Delhi Residential Welfare Associations also, RWAS. And then Arvind Kejriwal had come out with this Mullah committees also. Yes, Mullah committees also. So many of them are responsible. And who is accountable? That is where the problem, structural problems and functional issues, financial problems, and then problems related to personnel. That is where the problem. That is the reason why you can see lots of questions about urbanization in your general studies as well as public administration. Still, UPSC can ask lots of questions about urbanization in your general studies paper 1, polity governance, economy as well as ethics case studies. You have questions. Be prepared for all these things. And I would expect you to go through that 12th plan report on urban development. Very good report. Yes. Yes. You mean to say that developing satellite towns to reduce congestion? No, the question is, you are not talking about, as I said, we always look at the issues from a macro perspective. It is not about the floor place, index and all this. These are all micro things. Structural reorganization means structures that are there in urban areas which are responsible for governance in terms of slum dwellings and then urban renewal, all these things. Obviously, that's what hardwiring challenges in the form of structures and software in the form of personnel and functions. The same thing, you will be coming back to only these things. Going around, you will come back to only these things. I would expect you to go through that one, urban development. Very, very good topic, because as I said, in all 4 papers of GS and public administration, very, very important topic. Next, 14th Finance Commission gave more emphasis to equity and in the process ignored efficiency in horizontal mobilization of funds. Comment. So, what is the criticism against 14th Finance Commission here? What is the criteria for devolving funds to the states? So what is the difference between 13th and 14th here? Here criteria, what is it? Population. Okay. In population, what is it? In 1971 census, according to 13th Finance Commission, what is the percentage? 13th Finance Commission, 25%. And 14th, 17.5. And 14th Finance Commission had come out with 2011 census also. It has included 2011 census also, 10%. 2011 census. So that means the more the population, the more the funds you will get. At least in 1971 census, the population was less. So those states, those states where population has not grown rapidly, have benefited out of 13th Finance Commission. Now with 14th Finance Commission, they have increased the weightage for population and they have taken into consideration 2011 census also. And what happened because of this? States like Kerala, which have reduced their population, have lost out because of 14th Finance Commission recommendations. In the name of equity, they have compromised with efficiency in horizontal devolution of funds. Next, what is the next criteria? Fiscal capacity, income distance. What did the 13th Finance Commission suggest? 47.5. And 14th Finance Commission, 50%. That means the more poor you are, the more you get funds from the central governments. It is incentivizing poverty and penalizing efficiency. Incentivizing poverty and penalizing efficiency. Next, area. The third criteria is area. And what is the weightage given by 13th Finance Commission? 10%. And 14th Finance Commission, it has increased the weightage to 15%. 15%. Area they have given, they have increased the weightage to 15%. So obviously what happens? Smaller states would lose out. Smaller states. Rajasthan is a big state, but the population is less. Rajasthan will benefit. Smaller states will lose out. Next, forest cover. This forest cover is a new addition made by 14th Finance Commission. Here, how much did they give forest cover? 7.5%. And the most important thing, the fiscal discipline of the states in terms of reducing deficits and increasing their revenues. Fiscal discipline of the states in terms of reducing deficits and increasing their revenues. 13th Finance Commission had given 17.5%. 13th Finance Commission had given 17.5%. Here, it's already over. 100%. 0. 14th Finance Commission has removed this fiscal discipline criteria. And that is what the question talks about. That is what the question talks about. So what the 14th Finance Commission has done? It is incentivizing those states which are performing badly in terms of reducing poverty, in terms of reducing population. It has incentivized those states which performed badly in terms of reducing poverty and population. Whereas those states which performed well on these indicators, have been penalized for their performance. That is the reason why the relative share of states like Kerala, Gujarat Tamil Nadu had come down relative share of states like Kerala, Gujarat and Tamil Nadu have come down after 14 Finance Commission recommendations. Performing states have been penalized for their performance. Performing states have been penalized for their performance. So, then what do you suggest? You suggest that when you are writing answers, always take the help of committees only and commissions. You say that as suggested by M.M. Punji Commission on Center-State Relations, fiscal discipline should be given more importance. Because apart from equity, efficiency is also important. Fiscal discipline should be given more importance. Next, as the panchayat democracy descends down to the dustings, the office of the collector, like that of the governor, tends to become anachronistic in the federal political system of India. Examine the statement. What the statement says is that the office of collector would also become less significant as that of governor, as panchayat democracy becomes real in India. So you start your answer with the colonial times. Colonial times, what happened during the colonial times? During the colonial times, governor of the province was the real executive. Governor of the province was the real executive. Why? Why? Because of the unwillingness on the part of the colonial government to transfer power to native Indians. During the colonial times, governor was the real executive because of the unwillingness on the part of the Britishers to transfer power to people elected representatives. Now you have to find the interlinkage here. After independence, with the adoption of a federal form of democracy, governor's position had become nominal. Governor's position had become nominal with chief minister as the real executive. Chief minister as the real executive. In 1992, 73rd amendment was introduced. In 1992, 73rd amendment was introduced. 73rd amendment was introduced, which has transferred powers to local self bodies. Which has transferred powers to local self bodies, local self governments. It is believed that the office of collector would also undergo the same kind of transformation as that of governor. The office of collector would also undergo the same kind of transformation as that of governor. That means the collector would become a nominal executive at the local level. Collector would become a nominal executive at the local level, with the real powers being transferred to people elected representatives. With real powers transferred to people elected representatives. But did it happen? Examine the statement. It did not happen in reality. It did not happen in reality because of unwillingness on the part of state governments to transfer power to local bodies. Unwillingness of the state government to transfer power to local bodies. Next, discuss the factors which resulted in cooperative federalism in India. Yes. No, but again, district collector can be there. He could become like what the governor after independence, a nominal executive. But that is what I am saying. Governor is only a nominal executive. At the state, at the district level also, district collector can become a nominal executive with the real power in the hands of, that is what second Yardstick suggested. What did second Yardstick suggested? The district collector should be like a chief secretary at the state level. Who should be providing aid and advice to people elected representatives. Yes, that is what it did not happen. That's what we are saying. Staff agencies do not have any real powers. The power of staff agency is only advisory in nature. Discuss the factors which resulted in cooperative federalism in India since the beginning of 1990s, in spite of the fact that our constitution is mostly biased in favor of the union government. Why did we move towards cooperative federalism in India since 1990s? Yes, you can mention all of them. First one is the end of single party rule at the center. End of single party rule at the center. Second, emergence of coalition governments. Third, regional political parties playing a key role in the formation of a government at the center. Key role in formation of government at the center. Fourth, presidential activism. Presidential activism after 1990s because of the weakening of the position of Prime Minister. Because of a weakening of position of Prime Minister. Next, emergence of a third tier in governance. Emergence of third tier in governance. In the form of local self governments. Next, judicial activism. Judicial activism, which prevented the misuse of Article 356. Next, increasing awareness among citizens. Increasing awareness among citizens, which forced political parties to act in a democratic manner. Next, which forced political parties to act in a democratic manner. Next, the process of liberalization, privatization, globalization. Process of liberalization, privatization, globalization, which compelled the union and the state governments to come together. Which compelled union and state governments to come together. Next, media activism. Media activism, which had come in the way of a arbitrary decision making process. Which had come in the way of arbitrary decision making process. Media activism. So all these things have resulted in cooperative federalism. You have to explain all these things. I think you can explain all of them. Yes? Very good. Or do you want me to explain? Not required. Very good. I am just only asking you. It does not mean that I will explain. I would like to see the faces of those people who wanted me to. Okay. Next, rural development in India suffers from 3 F's as identified by Chief Minister's Conference. Discuss. What are 3 F's? Functions, finances and functionaries. Functions, finances and functionaries. Functions, finances and functionaries. Here you are talking about devolution index. Devolution index. prepared by IIPA, Indian Institute of Public Administration, to measure performance of state governments in implementation of 73rd Amendment. To measure performance of state governments in implementation of 73rd Amendment. Almost all the states have performed poorly. All the states have performed poorly. And the performance of state governments is extremely poor in finances. Key for any devolution, finances. Big states like UP and Bihar, have transferred less than 20% of funds to local self governments. Less than 20% of funds to local self governments. And then functionaries. Local self governments do not have any personnel of their own to implement the programs. They do not have any personnel of their own to implement programs. They still depend on central and state government employees. Central and state government employees. They do not have any control over their activities. They don't have any control over their activities. When it comes to functions, 29 subjects were to be transferred. 29 only? 29? Yes, very good. 29 subjects were to be transferred to local self governments. Activity mapping was done. Activity mapping was done by IIPA to see the number of activities performed by local self governments. Number of activities performed by local self governments. Again, the performance is extremely poor. Performance is extremely poor. Then write about what can be done. Recommendations. You can write about what should be done. And in terms of finances, what should be done? The recommendations of State Finance Commission should be implemented. Every state budget must have a separate window for local self governments. Timely disbursal of funds to local self governments. Timely disbursal of funds to local self governments. Next, providing opportunities for local self governments to augment their revenues by imposing new taxes. Providing opportunities for local self governments to augment their revenues. Next, there should be a district civil service. There should be a district level civil service on the lines of All India services and state services. District civil service on the lines of All India services and state services. And members of this district civil service work directly under local self governments. Next, devolution of funds by the central government to the states. Devolution of funds by central government to the states should be made conditional. Devolution of funds by central government to the states should be made conditional on the basis of activity mapping and devolution index. On the basis of activity mapping and devolution index. That means those states which perform well on devolution index should only be given funds by the central government. And then recently 14th Finance Commission, what it has done? It has allocated separately funds for local self-governments also. What percentage of funds are given to local self-governments? 5%. You can include that also. 5% of funds. Next, Urban infrastructure in India is facing serious crisis because of scarcity of finances. Discuss measures to augment finances of urban local bodies. So, as we have discussed earlier, according to 12th 5-year plan, 60 lakh crores of rupees are needed to improve urban infrastructure. So, how can the urban local bodies get monies? If you look at programs like Smart Cities and Amrut, the government is expected to spend an amount of 1 lakh crores of rupees on Smart Cities and Amrut over a period of 5 years. So obviously the amount is not enough, because what is required is 60 lakh crores. The government is only spending 1 lakh crores. So what about the remaining small change, 59 lakh crores? From where will the government get the funds? What should be done to improve urban finances? What should be done? By the way, how many of you are writing mains? Quite a good number. Quite a good number. Okay. And you can give your number in the office, because I might be giving more some additional material for your GS and other things also. I keep on giving, so you can come and collect it. I will be giving in 2-3 days time important articles from newspapers, especially Times of India and Indian Express. All of you are reading only Hindu, right? So Times of India comes out with very good articles, especially on governance, policy issues, which UPSC is focusing on in your all 4 papers of GS. I will be giving those articles, and then I will be giving some important current developments in the form of the Niti Aayog reports, very important, and whatever important that I find, I will be giving it. So you can be in touch with the office, and they will tell you. In the next 2-3 days time you can collect, maybe in the next 4-5 days you can collect the important articles from Times of India, because they contain very good information which you must be quoting in your answers. Especially in the main examination, the entire game lies in coming out with the relevant facts to the questions, and I will be giving that. Similarly, as I said, if I find the 12th plan report on urban development and other things, I will keep it here, and if you want you can get it xeroxed. Important things. Similarly, important aspects of economic survey and other things, so that it will be beneficial for you. So coming back here, what are the measures that should be taken to augment finances of urban local self-governments? What should be done? Obviously, urban local bodies cannot depend on the central and state governments. They must improve their finances. What are the money given by the central and state governments is not sufficient. So what can they do? How can they augment their finances? Rationalization of user charges. Rationalization of user charges. Second, timely disposal of funds to urban local bodies by state governments. Timely disposal of funds to urban local bodies by state governments. Third, full implementation of recommendations of state finance commissions. Full implementation of recommendations of state finance commissions. Fourth, central government selling excess land available. This is one of the important measures. Central government selling excess land available with public sector enterprise, through which central government can earn lakhs of crores of rupees. The money can be used to finance urban infrastructure. These public sector enterprise, central public sector enterprises are sitting on huge amounts of land which can be used. For example, railways, you take it, they have huge amount of land. The land can be sold, and the money can be used to finance urban infrastructure. Next, urban local bodies raising finances by issuing municipal bonds. By issuing municipal bonds. Next, what else can be done by the urban local bodies? Urban local bodies selling assets within their locality, unused assets within their locality, to raise finances. Next, capital expenditure of urban local bodies to be shared by the stakeholders. Capital expenditure should be shared by the stakeholders. For example, you want in a water connection, what is the amount of money that needs to, the municipal body has to lay water pipelines and other things. The capital expenditure to be shared by the beneficiaries. Capital expenditure to be shared by beneficiaries. Next, adopting accrual based accounting techniques. Accrual based accounting techniques to know about the real position of urban bodies, real financial position of urban local bodies. Next, accrual based accounting techniques. Next, removing unwanted subsidies, populistic subsidies. For example, Arvind Kejriwal, he gives water free of cost. Populistic subsidies. Delhi state government gives water free of cost. Is it required? Not required. People of Delhi, highest per capita income. Why should they be getting water free of cost? Delhi has highest per capita income, I think, in India. Delhi or Bombay? Delhi, I think. Delhi has a per capita income, highest per capita income. So removing populistic subsidies. And then looking for financial assistance from other countries through agreements, by entering into agreements. Financial assistance from other countries by entering into agreements with other countries in the form of loans and aid. In the form of loans and aid. So these are all the measures to improve urban finances. This is what you have to write. So that is it. I think next week, do you have any test? Next week there is no test. On 20th. Before that, as I said, you can contact and I will be giving more material for your GS as well as PowerPoint point of view.